Welcome to Overflow, the podcast, formerly the In This Together podcast. Still hosted by Maia, me, now joined by Blakely.
We're inviting you into real, honest conversations with guests like Chance and Isla.
And friends, all about life, faith,
health, relationships, and more. It's not about having it all together.
It's about letting God lead. By His grace,
not ours, our cups overflow, even in the wild and barren places, just like Psalm 23 promises.
So grab your laundry basket, start your walk, or just take a breather.
We're so glad you're here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Overflow, the podcast. We are so happy that you're here. I'm one of your hosts, Maia.
And I'm Blakely.
And we are going to be talking about something, and if you saw it in the title, you've clicked it and you know what it is, but it is something that can be very difficult and not fun to talk about, and it is breakups. It is such... Sorry, I have to have a moment. You know, that just helped break the ice. Yeah. But truly, breakups are one of those things that I think even when we're talking about it with our friends, we almost like don't want to bring up, you know, maybe it's the idea of breaking up with somebody or maybe all the sadness that you're feeling because of you're going through a breakup. And so we're going to have just a conversation about breakups, how to do them well, how to kind of even maybe see things that you're like, you're listening to this and you're like, maybe I do need to break up with somebody. And so maybe these will kind of help maybe affirm or just different things like that, of just hearing other people's stories within breakups, because although we're in some amazing relationships now, Blakely is dating an incredible guy and I am married right now to the most amazing man. And even though we're in those relationships does not mean that we haven't experienced heartbreak and pain. And so what kind of made us want to do this podcast is because we don't know if it's something in the air or what has been going on, but we have been getting so many messages, like just over the past like 3 weeks of people who are just really in the just pits of struggling with their breakup, and they have just recently broken up with people, and or you know they're dealing with some of the residual effects of it and just kind of going through all of that. And so it was really just something that kept on being highlighted to us. And so we're so excited to kind of get to chat about just breakups. And I'm going to kind of just toss the question a little bit over to Blakely first. And if you haven't already listened, I did a podcast with Isla too about breakups. I'm still going to be sharing my experience, but if I don't go super in depth, I encourage you to go back and listen to that too. We have 2 of them about breakups. You could just search Overflow the podcast and breakups and you'll be able, and they'll actually come up. And so anyways, those are 2 good ones if you're also looking for some more, but we're going to get to hear today a little bit more about mine as well, but also about our incredible Blakely and her story with breakups. So I just want to hear, you know, maybe what has your experience been like with breakups? Have you been through like a recent breakup?
Yeah, so like Maya said, I have been through not 1 breakup, but 3. And there's no judgment, there's no shame there. But obviously I've learned a lot through all of them. I've made a lot of mistakes through a lot of them. But there was 1 breakup in particular that if you know me, you definitely know about this breakup, because this relationship was just spanned a lot of years of my life and really took myself and everyone else in my life by surprise, because I really met this guy before college, and then we dated throughout college. We ended up breaking up, and then our relationship after that was super like on and off, and you know, running into each other in states we don't live in. It was just it's been a really crazy journey. And so in the midst of, you know, all the hardships with that, I would have never chosen it in the moment, but looking back, I'm so grateful because I learned so much about God in that. I learned so much about myself in that. But just to give a little backstory to that relationship, I was, you know, in this relationship and just got to a point about 1.5 years in where I just found myself, you know, every day waking up with so much anxiety. And I would wake up and immediately the first thought in my head was like, oh my gosh, something just feels off in this relationship. And to be honest, the relationship was pretty good. Like that's why most people in my life were surprised, because it was a really good, healthy relationship. But there was just something about it that I would wake up and I just felt like a pit in my stomach. And so I'd wake up and I'd give it to God and I'd be like, Lord, this relationship is yours. And if you do not want it to continue, please, like, as scary and terrifying as that would be, I would rather have what you have for me than stay in the wrong relationship. And so that went on for about 6 months. And one day I eventually ended up waking up and had a conversation with a friend, and I'll never forget it. I was sitting at the pool, and I, in my head, was like, oh my gosh, I hope she doesn't bring up blank, his name. And she ends up bringing him up, and it was like something in me was just like immediately poured out all of these things. And by the end, it was just this crazy moment of, oh my gosh, I need to break up with him. And I remember after that breakup, I was sitting with a friend, and I told her, I was like, if I can end things with him, then I must really love God, because he is the person I love the most. He's my best friend. Our relationship really was so healthy. But I know that God is calling me to end this relationship, and I don't fully understand why, but I know that what he has for me is not this. And it was the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life, because breakups are basically choosing, and I know this sounds so dramatic, but it's basically choosing to put to death someone in your life. And when you're experiencing the loss of a loved one, you don't have the ability to talk to that person. But when you're going through a breakup, they are still alive, and you're choosing, even though you are alive, I'm choosing to not have you in my life. Which is quite literally one of the most difficult things to go through when you really love someone. So that breakup has definitely been one that it's taken me 3-4 years to get over. And there's been a lot of healing that's happened. And as I said, I've made so many mistakes in that breakup with seeing him and rendezvous, and just, I'm just gonna be honest, like a lot of really, a lot of things that I did that I wish I didn't do. And if I could, you know, obviously we're going to speak more into those things as this episode goes. But that was that big breakup. And then the other two I'll just touch on quickly. The next guy was one that I just had so much fun dating, and he was so great. And I really had told my friends, I was like, I feel like I'm going to marry him. And I think I was just on the high of dating someone so fun. And I needed that in the midst of that other breakup. And I just, thought I was going to marry him. And one day he broke up with me out of nowhere. And it's so crazy, because when I look at it with a zoomed in lens, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like in the moment, it was like, oh my gosh, like, how is this happening? I thought I was going to marry him. God, I know you're not a god of games, but what the heck, blah, blah, blah. And looking at it now from a zoomed out lens, I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. He is an amazing person, but we were just not right for each other. And I would say that to him. Like, that's just, it's a miracle when people do work out. And so I'm so grateful for how that one turned out. But that was definitely a hard one to process also. That and then the last one was with, again, an amazing guy who loved God so much. And you were a part of my life for this one. But it was one of those things where I think he's amazing, and I know he thought I was amazing. And at the end of the day, we just weren't right for each other. And, you know, I would literally, if I saw any of them today, I would just have such a sweet feeling towards all of them, because I really do wish them all the best. And that's the thing about breakups, is you don't have to demolish the person to get over them. But you can 100%. Really just realize that it really is a miracle when two people work out for each other. Oh my gosh,
And I just want to even stop right there, because I know there's so many people listening to this, and maybe you identify with one of these, or you maybe don't identify with one of these. And before we go any further, we both pray that this podcast encourages you, and also makes you just feel like you're sitting in a room, like actually with us, and just getting to hear from other sisters in Christ of like how we experience. And we're not going to know all the answers, but we just hope that this is comforting in some regard too, and also encouraging in the season that you're in, and that you also feel seen. And so anyways, I was just thinking about that, of like, as you're listening to this episode, like, it's just such a gift that we get to come on here, and like, even you're talking about like a guy breaking up with you, and you thought you're gonna get married to him, and you're laughing, and like, I'm so somewhat laughing. And it just shows you, like, I hope that that really just can show you too that you kind of, we've talked about in an episode about just seasons and how, you know, this breakup is a season, you know, that this breakup, it's not going to be like that for the rest of your life, you know, and that you actually will be able to maybe look back on it one day and like be like, okay, I actually see how God's working. I see. So we just pray that this is an encouragement for that, and you just walking in the right steps in the right direction with that. And so you mentioned the 3 different breakups, and I kind of want to go back to the first one and just ask you, you know, he was a great guy, even, and maybe you could talk about this with the other guy that you had broken up with too. But, you know, you were dating these great guys, but, you know, there was something in you that was like, you know, I got to break up or whatever it was. And that happens because you probably saw signs or saw things, not in the sense of like saw a sign in the clouds. I mean, like saw a sign as in like maybe he was just like kind of like red flags that word we use, where you're like, okay, something's kind of like something's not really right here. So I'd love to hear some of your red flags in that, because I know that I had some of my own too. So I'll share those afterwards. I'm curious to see how aligned they are.
It's funny because in the moment, and even in the midst of, you know, when after the breakup being, I mean, this is like us going back to each other was even after those other relationships. It was dragged out for so long. And so it's funny because in the moment of missing someone, you see only the best in them. And same for them towards me. Like when they're missing me, they're only thinking about the good things. Whereas when you really sit down and think about, okay, why did this relationship end? I can see, okay, there were a lot of very valid things. And to answer your question, for that first relationship, it was just one of those things where we were so insanely comfortable. Like, we were best friends. We got along so well. But when we got down to the nitty gritty of our lives and the direction we were going, he was amazing. I was great. It was just like, there was so many times that it would clash. And for instance, like one of the things that brings me the most life is going and traveling and doing these like mission trips and whatever. This is such a small example, but it just goes to show how much God cares about the details. And obviously you're never going to align with someone perfectly, but to get to the point, I would be on mission trips while dating him, and I'd obviously be there without him. And I just remember thinking, like, I just feel like I can't imagine the two of us here together. Like I just can't. I really felt like this spiritual part of my life, he had his relationship with God, but it was very different than how my relationship with God worked. And obviously that's the biggest part of my life. And so I think just when I saw our futures, even down to like, I mean, again, I think he's so amazing and I only wish him the best, but I think even down to like how we would raise kids and just the church we would pick, like those things just didn't fully align. And I felt like I had given it. So that's one thing I'll say, like, give it time to see if those things will align. But I had given it so much time. And I think God had brought me to the point of realizing, like, oh no, this is actually a bigger deal than I thought it was. And when you're in a relationship and you're so comfortable, you begin to look over the little things. But when you're out of the relationship and you look back, you see how big the pile is with all the little things. But when you're looking at the little things individually, like the mission trip thing, someone might be like, oh, that's such a small thing. Yes, it is. Like that wasn't a reason to break up. But I had so many little things that when I looked back, it was this giant pile, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense.
And I think it's just cool to even look back on the story of when we did break up. And I'll never forget this. I was crying so hard in my bathroom. I had broken up with him. We weren't in the same place. It was awful. Flew home to my parents' house because I was on my way there. And I remember I had actually gotten so sick from being heartbroken. I had like 104 fever. It was terrible. Like my body was physically ill from the emotions I was experiencing and the loss that I was experiencing. And I remember sitting in my bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was just bawling, crying. Like I can see myself in the mirror, like just like pain and sadness. And I got back to my bed and my phone was on my bed and I picked it up and this girl had texted me and she was like, I don't know why I felt like I was supposed to send you this. She was like, it talks about in some proverb, like God using our tears to make this beautiful watercolor.
Wow.
And it was just so
Wow.
insane.
Wow.
I got back to my, I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
The timing of that is absolutely wild. So if you feel alone and unseen by God in the midst of a breakup, he is there.
Yeah.
And pray to see him. But it was just so sweet. And I look back on that as such a sweet reminder that breakups, just because they are so hard and hurt so bad and they feel like the pain is never going to end, you will get through it. And that sounds like such a simple thing for us to sit here and say, but you will get through it. And two, just because it's so hard doesn't mean it was the wrong choice.
Yeah. So good.
And I think so many of the girls that have been reaching out to us lately, it's like, I just wasn't ready for this to be so hard and so difficult. And because it's so hard, does that mean I made the wrong choice?
Oh, so good.
And I can't explain enough how worth it is to have gone through all of that pain. Whether God brought me Lawson or not, but in the terms that he did bring me Lawson, like getting to experience the joy of this relationship, and like I would have taken that pain 20 times over.
Yeah, 100,000%. There's so many things I honestly want to say, but I feel so similar. I mean, I'm just thinking back to myself. I had a 3.5 year relationship. I had a few relationships. I'm like thinking about it, and I don't know if we count like middle school relationships where you're dating them, so I'm like not gonna say all those. But I would say like seriously, before Chance, I had 2 like serious relationships, and one of them was in high school and college, and it was for 3.5 years. And I remember very similarly, like after I had broken up with him, and it was very similar to what you were saying in the sense of, but his was a little bit different, is that he believed in God, but he wasn't following God. And like he was a great guy. Like he honestly treated me great. Like I could have gone, and this is the crazy part. It's like I could have gone and made that decision
100%
and been with him, but I knew in my heart, I was like, I know that he's not following God all the way, and I know that this is not like what God has for me. Like it was one of those things where I was like, I could go, and I could continue on. And I think I had brought up to him a multiple times before we broke up. And honestly, for me, I waited way too long. Like I probably knew about 2 years in, or a year and a half in, that, he wasn't really following God, but I was just like, okay, like one day he will. Like one day he will. And I just kind of always come back to this thought of like, you can't date for potential. Like, like you can't date of like, oh yeah, he has the potential to be so good. It's like, where is he right now? Where are you right now? And so I remember, because it's so easy to date somebody for potential, and you don't marry potential. You marry that person and exactly as they are. And if you're thinking, oh well, I'll marry them and they'll change, like that's not very loving, know. And anyways, but I remember just being in that spot whenever I had finally decided, I was like, okay, I think that we're just completely differently aligned. Like I know I want to follow the Lord with my whole life and my whole heart and my whole soul, even though I'm not making the decisions for that right now. And I know that you don't really desire that, like in the same way that I do. Like I want it to be like take up my cross and come follow me. I don't want to just settle for believing in God. And I think that was like a really big thing on my heart, where I had to make that choice of kind of like that narrow path that we've talked about before, of like, am I going to choose just to believe in God and just let that be enough, or am I going to choose to like really follow him and live a life that God has intended me to? And so I remember after I made that decision and we ended up breaking up, I wish that what would have happened is that I would have ran to God and that I would have been amazing, but I just fell into like the deepest sadness, the deepest depression. I like would sit outside of my sorority house and I was like, why do the leaves turn green? Like, why does this matter? Like, I'm not even kidding. I just did not. I was like, what did I just do? Like, I don't know. I think I had so much shame and guilt from things that we had done in that relationship that I really had a hard time coming to the Lord after that, and just being like, here I am, because I felt like I had kind of just missed him, and I feel like I had kind of just disobeyed him, honestly, too. And so I didn't really allow him to help me with any of my pain or any of my just things that I was experiencing. And I think the biggest thing that I want to just kind of remind people of truth, like say you've made the decision to break up and then you have this feeling of, I missed them. Like I miss them a lot, like I miss them. And it doesn't matter if you've been dating for 2 months, 3 months, 3 years. It's natural to miss somebody after they leave your life.
For sure.
Like, even if you think about a toxic friend that you might have had in the past, when they leave your life, you're still going to miss them, you know? Like, even though you're not going to miss all the toxicity of it or whatnot, you know? Or maybe you have somebody in your life, like a family member or something. Yeah. It's like, you're going to miss, if you've been spending time with somebody for 3 months to 5 months to 3.5 years, anytime, you are going to miss them after they leave your life. And that doesn't mean, I think so many times we correlate in breakups, okay, because I miss them, that means I need to get back in the relationship with them. What did I do?
Oh my gosh.
And that's not at all
No.
what God like wants us to do. That's letting our feelings dictate and letting our feelings make the decisions.
Yeah.
But I think I just want to encourage somebody right now, if you're missing the person that you broke up with, but you know that was the right choice, as much as it hurts and tears you apart, just because you miss them does not mean that you need to get back together with them, and that you need to go back to that relationship. Yeah. And I wish, oh my gosh, as much as I probably would have rolled my eyes from hearing that, I wish that someone would have told me that, because it would have just given me so much clarity as to all the things that I was feeling. Because I just was like, I remember just wrestling so much but I miss him so much. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you missed him. You spent so much time with him. He was your best friend, you know? Yeah. And I think that my encouragement would be, and I know that this is going to sound just so cheesy and all the things, but my really real true encouragement would be, I ran to a lot of different things. Whenever I missed him, I ran to drinking and to partying and to other guys and looking for them to look at me a certain way. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, who's going to like me now? And finding affirmation and when guys commented on things for me. And I went down that entire path. And that was the worst path I've ever taken. And I can confidently say that you do not want to go down that path, and because that is the path to destruction, and there is actually a path to life that you can take during this breakup of taking that and bringing that to the Lord. So just be careful with what you run to when you're missing them, because you could run to a path of destruction even though you made an obedient decision. Yeah. So make sure that you are going towards the path of life that God has for you still when you've made that decision for obedience. So good. And I remember in the midst of my breakup, I had a lot of people, like I was down bad, like every single night, just it was really rough for years. It would surface for a lot of years. And I just have had so many people over the course of the last 4 years since our breakup be like, well, you know, it's just not normal to miss someone this much. Like maybe you are supposed to get back together. And for some people that does happen. Like there are some breakups that, you know, it is just a season, and maybe God uses that season to grow and change something within them. But for me, that was not the case. And I had so many people speaking into my life saying, well, you know, if you miss him so much, then you should get back together with him, yada, yada, yada. And as that was from such a good place. But I think the tip I would give in the midst of receiving that is really asking yourself, like, but what is the peace I feel from God? Because in the midst of all of that, I would deep down, even when I didn't want to admit, know that wasn't my person. Even when I said, okay, I really think this is the person I'm going to marry. Like, you know, we just had this crazy run-in and this must be from God. But deep down, something within me was like, this isn't it. Like, this isn't it. But I was listening more to what people were saying because of how sad I was. Of like, well, if you're this sad, you should be with that person. Then I was the conviction deep within me. And so if you're in the midst of that and you're hearing from, I was with a girl recently and she was like, my mom is just telling me I shouldn't be this sad and I should just get back together with him. I was like, no. Like that just, if that doesn't align with what God is convicting you deep within your soul, then don't listen to that. So good. And that was, and I think a point I would bring to that is like, what is that conviction specifically? Because I remember, I love that you said this, because I was at a hairdresser and I had gone through my breakup and I was telling him how much I missed like my ex-boyfriend, how much pain I was in. And then basically I get out of the chair and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go get back together with him. Like I literally, like this person had encouraged me. Like it's the same thing where I was like, the conviction I felt, all the things I knew just went out the window. And I was like, wait, but I love him. Like I'm going to go run. So I literally drive back. I was so excited. I knock on his door and I'm like, I'm ready to get back together with you. And he's like, oh. And I was like, I had played this 1,000 times in my mind. I was like, why wouldn't he want to get back together with me? Like, what? Like, so stupid. And he's like, well, and he did what I'm so thankful. I will never actually thank you, Lord, right now in this moment that he did this. And he said, Maya, you had the strength to do what I never could have done. He's like,
I got told the same thing.
he was like, I'm not getting back together with you. And I was like life sucked out of me. Could not believe that he said that. And exactly like you, I was following, and then thank God that happened and whatnot, but I was following the conviction, or I was following what people were telling me rather than the conviction of what God had really put on my heart. And I will say this was my thought as far as like when it comes to like missing someone and maybe you're gonna get back together. I knew the conviction in my heart. I didn't think, oh, well, maybe I'll never get back together with him. I thought, well, maybe in a year, but I knew my conviction was if he's not fully following the Lord, then that is not my person. And that was where I was able to really just be strong in. And so I think that is where whenever you're kind of thinking of, oh, well, maybe he is my person. Like I miss him, I'm going to go back to him. It's like, no, like go back to what was your conviction? Was it that, there was a big issue in the relationship? Like go back to like, that aspect of like, for me, it was, he wasn't following the Lord wholeheartedly. So I knew that wasn't my husband because I'm going to submit to him and I want him to be submitted to the Lord. Yeah. And so I think that was something just to ask yourself, whenever people are coming in, which is such a sweet thing, but sometimes we also forget that aspect of it. And sometimes because we don't want to share it because we're like, if we share this, then we know what they're going to say, So now that we kind of talked a little bit about, breaking up and that kind of aspect of it, I would love to hear a little bit from you too on how did you handle one, being broken up with, two, a breakup, just in general, like how do you handle, we kind of just talked about, like I said, being in the relationship, choosing to break up, all those things, even though there's so much more we can cover too. But, for time's sake, would love to hear a little bit more about how you actually handle that being broken up with and breakup feeling.
Totally. It's so funny because we've talked about this a lot recently because we really have had so many girls, and I don't say that in a weird way, but I'm saying that because that's why we're doing this podcast because this conversation is just so needed. And before I say any of the recommendations I have or things I did well or things I did wrong, nothing we say is universal necessarily. Obviously, there are things that maybe worked for us or we wish we did, but ultimately, God is the only person who can bring full healing. So take the tips and tricks for what they're worth, but understand that he should be the one your eyes are completely set and fixed on in the midst of a breakup. Going off of that. So yeah, like I said earlier, I've broken up with people, but I've also been broken up with, and both are painful and both had their own challenges. I was telling Maya earlier, it's so interesting because I would have always thought getting broken up with was a lot harder. And in that first relationship, we had so many going back and forth of should we get back together, should we not? And where he was choosing to not, and those sucked tremendously. But in the relationship I got broken up with, I think that for one, it was just shorter. So there obviously wasn't as much of a emotional connection there, but also for me, it was one of those things where, and this came as a byproduct of walking with God for so long, but I feel like at the time, God had prepared me for that breakup. I was walking through a lot of stuff on identity and who I am and figuring out who I am and what I want to do. And I was about to graduate college and I had so many dreams even for what life after college would look like. And so I think when he broke up with me, I was more okay than I would have thought because in my head, I was like, well, if he's choosing to not want to be with me, I don't want to be with someone that doesn't want to be with me. And I think because at the time I was so much more emotionally healthy, I was able to walk out of that breakup a bit better because I was like, all right, I know who I am. I know who I want to be. I know who I'm following, God, and God has so much more for me. And so I just hope that that encourages you, even if you're in a season of singleness, just knowing who you are is so impactful in every season of your life, and getting to experience just the overflow of abiding in God every single day through that breakup was the sweetest thing. So looking back at that other breakup, I needed much more wisdom and help and guidance because it just was such a whole other beast. And one of the things, I'll start with what I did not do well. My brother always told me with his ex-girlfriends, he was like, I cut it cold turkey. I would just do the best of my ability, even when I wanted to reach back out to not. And I know in the moment it can feel so hard to imagine yourself never speaking to that person again. And I do think that there is situations in which maybe it's okay to have one more clarifying conversation. But in your truest of hearts, you know if you're just missing them versus if that conversation needs to happen. And I look back on that relationship, and there were so many nights where I'd lay in bed and out of my loneliness, I would just text him.
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh, I'm just missing you so much. Knowing good as well, he was missing me too. And that was so unfair to him. And I remember him telling me this in one of our moments of should we get back together or whatever, of just like, you were the one that ended things with me, and you constantly reaching out and saying how much you missed me and how much you loved me still was so not fair. And if I can encourage anyone, whether you broke up with someone or whether you just gotten broken up with, it is so not worth it to reach back out. It is so not worth it. It drags it on so much longer. I mean, our breakup has spanned the course of so many years because we both made immature decisions to reach out when we shouldn't, to meet up when we shouldn't, to just unhealthy. And I wish for anything. Obviously, I can't go back and change anything, and I don't have regrets because I learned so much. And if all of that was just so that I could sit here and spare you years and years and years of dealing with a breakup, then it was worth it. Do everything in your power when you're laying in bed at night missing the person to just not reach out.
Yeah.
Because it really is never worth it.
No.
And it's unfair to them.
Yeah, it is. And it's unfair to yourself too.
Yeah.
Like it's unfair to you to be putting yourself back in a situation where you're still entertaining those feelings.
Yeah.
And I was the exact same way. I remember we had like so many conversations afterwards that truly, in all honesty, did not need to happen.
No.
Like did not need to happen. It was more so just, and I think even things that he did, it was kind of hard because with him and I, we had the same friend group. And I remember we would have conversations about like things that he had done to hurt me in that friend group. And I was like, I should have just been done with it. I should have just not brought any of those things up. I had this one really the big turning moment for me was my sophomore year. We had broken up. And then a few months later, I kind of just felt like, without better way, like language, I just felt like I was kind of like still living under his rock. Like I was still really affected by the things he was doing, even because we had the same friend group, all these different things. And I finally just decided, I was like, I'm done. Like I was like, we were supposed to have this big spring break trip where we all went together and everything. And I was like, even if this means me going home or me hanging out with different people, I was like, I just need to be done. Like I don't need to be putting myself back in this situation to be continuously like being hurt. And like, also, he's not able to freely do what he wants. If I see him talking to a girl, I'm freaking out, like just, it's not healthy to be in that realm. And so I made the decision. I was like, hey, I'm not going to go on spring break with all like our friends. I'm going to do something else. And it was an absolute explosion of just a disaster. But I knew like the entire time, I literally turned off my phone because of things just exploded so bad. And I turned off my phone. I remember all my friends like came to my dorm to like kind of encourage me and just be like, how are you doing? He apologized later on for that. But like, he's kind of really freaking out that like, you're making this. And I was just like, I feel so much peace because I'm like, this is me just living my own life now. And I think that so often we just kind of want to like almost stay buddies and we want to stay friends. And the reality is like you've had a relationship with them and there is a natural distance that needs to take place in order for you to heal and for you to not be living under each other's rocks, like for him under mine too. Like we need to be able to do those things. And it was cool because that spring break I ended up going on different than him. That's when Chance actually reached out to me and texted me, which is crazy. And I'm not promising that if that happens, but it was just cool how I like walked out in obedience of like, you know, it was really hard. Like it was bad, but it was such a thing where I had so much peace, and I was like, you know, I know this. And so I think if you're somebody who you're kind of playing or entertaining this idea of like having a conversation, I think really just removing yourself like from that person is, and praying into like, God, just will you help me just remove myself from this person is really, 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 really important. And I will say about like a year afterwards, when we had both gone our separate ways, you know, we still had the same friend group, so I'd see him here and there, but in no way was I like every time I was like, I went from always spending all that time to where I kind of found my own thing, you know? Yes. And so I would see him at stuff. It wasn't like I avoided him like the plague. Like I like would see him and stuff, but I wasn't like going up to him having conversations. Like I'd just be like, hey, what's up? You know, and leave. Mm-hmm. Like rather than be like, hey, how you doing? You know, blah, blah, blah. Like we know why we're doing that. Like we know why we're doing that. Like even if it's just to be friendly, you're wanting information. And that's not, even if for you genuinely say, this is just to be friendly, that is not fair to them, because for them, it might not be that way. And so I think like really reminding yourself of that. But I will say we had one conversation like a year later once we had both been really removed from everything, and it was such a good conversation of just, and not for everyone this happens, but it was just one of those things where we both were like, we're so sorry for all the different kind of like drama we put each other through by just not, you know, clearly cutting it. And so as Blakely said, I really hope that you take this into prayer and consideration for your own relationship, so that way you can really see, you know, so that way you don't make the same decisions that we did. Because of him and I, it wasn't just me who regretted it, it was him as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, and goodness, when you say regrets, I just see myself like even 2 years ago, like playing the following and unfollowing game. Yeah. So silly. Yeah. Like you don't ever expect yourself to get to that point. And in the midst of this, I was walking with God. Yeah. And I was just so longing for him and missing him that I allowed myself to make these decisions that maybe other girls were making, but that I shouldn't have been making and was not fair to him, and vice versa. Like we were in a wedding together in November, and talk about hard. Yeah. And I just felt like, I think I was finally to the point where God had just put loss into my life, and I was really at the point of, oh my gosh, wow. Like, thank you, Lord, for shutting this door over and over and over and over again. Yeah. From his side, from my side, whatever it was. Like, I was finally getting to see it. And it doesn't take a new relationship to get there. Yeah. But I think this was really a turning point for me when Lawson came into my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Well, the week after Lawson came into my life, I'm now in a wedding with my ex. Yeah. And it was just one of those things where I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm finally at the place where I know, like, we are not doing small talk at this wedding. We know too much about each other's lives. Yeah. When you start with that, oh my gosh, let's catch up, how are you? Then you feel known and seen by someone because they were at one point like family to you. Yeah. And it's just not healthy. And I think it can make us feel connected to them so much longer. Like the small talk can seem so innocent, but it's really not. Yes. And I remember, and I know this was not bad intent from his end by any means, because I had done this in different times too. But at that wedding, he was, brought up something about that I would know about his life. Yeah. And I just remember being like, nope, I'm not doing this. Yeah. I will avoid you, honestly, the whole night, because I don't want to partake in this, and I know where it leads, and this isn't healthy. And I think in the end, I'm sure he was grateful that I didn't stand and talk to him forever, because we both know deep down we're not ending up together. Yeah. So why would we drag this on longer and longer? Yes.
And I think if you're hearing anything from this conversation, it's that breakups are messy. Like I think, and they're a lot of times messy because there's so many emotions involved. For me, we were physically intimate before marriage, so then there's that aspect of it as well, where you're so emotionally attached to them, and and so you're having to really just even praying of God, like, please will you disconnect this? Like, it's just a whole different level of intimacy that I was never meant to experience. Like that was the consequences of the things that I had been doing. And so I think what we see sometimes in breakups, whether you have that or you don't have that at all, that breakups themselves are messy. And I think that so often you see a lot of, my question to you is, what do you do in the mess? There's so many different, like, maybe you're listening to this because you're like, I need more wisdom, which is awesome. And that's amazing. Great things to be doing in the midst of something messy. But then also you'll notice that maybe you isolate. Maybe you run from the mess, or maybe, whatever it is. And there's this story, I'm pretty sure it's a bull. We've talked about this before, but there's the story of a bull, and whenever they actually smell rain and they smell a storm, rather than trying to run from the storm and run away from it, and so that way they avoid it, they know that this quickest way through it is to actually go through it. The quickest way through the storm is to go, because the more we run, the storm's still coming and it's still lingering, and it's just going to take us a lot longer. And so I encourage you to be like a bull in this situation of like seeing this mess that maybe you're in or maybe you're experiencing right now, and not letting that make you run the opposite direction, but instead being like, no, I'm going to charge through this. I'm going to walk through this, even though I'm sad and I'm slumping and I'm struggling with every step. Reach out to literally the hands of the Father and be like, help walk me through this, because just truly the quickest way through it. And I think what all we were doing, if we really look at it on a macro lens, it's kind of fun, but if we look at it in a macro lens, is we were just prolonging the breakup. And we were prolonging those things by continuing to talk. And so I love that that's such a good piece of advice for somebody who is in the midst of the breakup and the sadness. And so now kind of speaking to the people who, they have, maybe they're like, okay, I'm at that step. Like I've done this, or maybe they're ready now and they're about to go do it. And I think, what do you kind of say to that sadness aspect of it? Because that is really real. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, totally. I think allowing yourself to have the grace to just sit in it. And even I was telling someone the other day, like I remember a mentor once told me, she said, Blakely, I am married with 4 kids and I love my husband more than life itself. And she was like, I still though have a love and appreciation for my ex-boyfriend, because at one point in my life, he was like family to me. And even though I'm in this amazing relationship with Lawson and I want to marry him and he is so great, there are still moments where I can have sadness for that relationship in my life and a longing to not be with that person, but they were like family at one point. And so I think giving yourself grace to just have a moment, whether you're years past or whether you're in the midst of it and you're really going through it and your friends are like, you should be fine by now. You should, not be sad anymore. Let's distract ourselves from the sadness. No, actually, like Maia said, pursue the storm, sit in the sadness, whether that's a day, whether that's a week. Obviously, you don't want to sit in the sadness for years and years on end, but allow yourself to just sit and really just not bypass what God might be leading you through. I think in the saddest moments of my relationship, that was honestly the most dependent I've had to be on God for just even just the hope that he gave me in those moments of deep sadness. That I think if I went and distracted myself, which at times I did, but sometimes distracting yourself from the sadness can really make you miss what God wants to teach you in those seasons. So that's a big thing I would say is just allow yourself the grace to sit in the sadness. I don't know. What's something that comes to your mind?
I love that so much. And I think a part of that would be that I'm thinking about is inviting friends into the sadness too. Like while you're in the storm, like not just being like, oh, I think when we go through breakup, we're almost like embarrassed kind of to talk about how long it's maybe. I know one of my friends, and she just had a really long time that she struggled with one of her breakups, and she just felt so embarrassed, and it just kept her so isolated for so long. And I think, and then I got to the point where I was like, wait, how are you doing? And then she's like, oh, this is how I'm doing. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know. And I think actually inviting, but she was so embarrassed to say it. And because it had been a long time. And I think inviting people in to those moments and allowing them to kind of like help encourage you and to speak truth over you. And I think even also like amidst the storm and whatnot, and as you're sitting in the sadness, I think just allowing yourself to also go and do things. I think you hit a key, not to distract yourself, but also to continue living life. You're going to continue, put a challenge on yourself, maybe to get out and do this event or whatever it is, it doesn't mean that you have to go do every single thing. And it doesn't mean that you have to show up 110% happy, but it like you kind of just like getting into another rhythm of life, you know, because that was an old rhythm of life and you're having to kind of bring yourself into a new one. Really and so good. I think I would just encourage you to, like Blakely said, sit in the sadness 100%. And then also along with that, just inviting people into it, and also like being like, okay, I can go and I can do things and I don't have to show up at, 100%, I think is a good thing. So I think all of those coincide in that storm season for sure.
Something I told a girl recently when she reached out is, she was like, I am just in the pits of it. And I said, one of the things that was the most influential in my big breakup was someone challenged me to go to my phone notes, because we always have our phones on us, and write down why you broke up. Whether that is because you got broken up with or why you broke up, write those things down, because it is so important to have something to turn back to. Because like I said earlier, when you're really missing someone, you only remember the good. Yeah. And it was so beneficial for me to be able to turn back to my phone notes and be like, okay, no. There were legit reasons why we broke up. Like, we are not broken up just because breaking up is fun. We were broken up for real reasons. And even when I got broken up with, what I could write down was, well, Lord, I want a man that is going to fiercely pursue me and want to be with me. And if that's not what I'm receiving, then I don't want it. Yeah. And so whether that's what's written, or whether it's what's written is we are not at the same place spiritually, he is not trustworthy with other girls, whatever it is, like, have those things written down, because even when you're sad, you're going to read those things and be reminded, okay, I don't want that. Yeah. And I think in bringing other people into it, maybe even inviting friends of like, hey, will you challenge me when I'm really sad? Yeah. To remind myself of why we broke up.
So good.
And you might not in the moment be happy that they're doing that, but you will look back weeks, months, years down the line and be so grateful for the friends that challenge you in the midst of breakups to remember why you broke up to begin with.
So good. And I don't know why, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about the girl who, is broken up with, and it's for just like this random reason, or just like this thing that like really has had a deep wound in your heart. And I just want to encourage you right now, like as you might be feeling that, not letting that become truth, and that you think that that's going to be how every relationship is, like maybe he broke up with you because I remember my ex-boyfriend was like, I've been crying about something, and he was like, you're just kind of like too much, like you don't need to cry about this. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I need to tone it down, like, but I wasn't able to naturally be myself. And now I see Chance, who loves me so much, and who, whenever I cry about something very similar, like allows me to be myself. And so for the one who maybe feels deeply wounded by whatever reason that they've been broken up with, I think remembering that just because he maybe broke up with you like that, or she broke up with you for something like that, if you're a guy listening to this, just because of that doesn't mean that you need to change, and that they're like that, and it doesn't mean that the next person is also going to say that. And so I think just realizing that the Lord, if he has a relationship for you, he wants it to be for you, like for how he uniquely made you. And so just remembering that, I think, is a really important thing. But yeah, anything else you want to kind of leave them with before we kind of end this off?
We know that this conversation can be really heavy, because maybe some of you are listening to this and you realize you have a decision to make, or you are listening to this in your bed with tears rolling down your face because you are in the pits of the breakup you're going through. We know that this episode is going to meet you all in such unique and different places. We just want all of you to know that although you might not know us personally, we want to be resources. We don't have all of the answers by any means, but if you ever need prayer, if you need someone to talk to, if you want to hop on one of Maia's light calls, we want to be here for you guys, because we both have walked through this and understand just the complexities of it. And every breakup is so different and so unique. So we're not going to ever have all the answers, but we have walked through the pain of real and raw breakups, whether it be broken up with or breaking up with someone else. And so we just want you to know that we're here for you, and we love you guys. And we hope to eventually get to do a series going into all of the complexities of relationships. But we're excited we got to jump on and chat with you guys about the lovely topic of breakups today.
Yes. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we hope that this just restored your heart a little bit.
Yes. We love you guys, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.